3 students, one simple, everyday lie, and a getaway that literally descended into absolute nightmare fuel. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that proves, without a shadow of a doubt, why you should never, ever ignore your gut instincts. We're reconstructing the harrowing journey of Ravi, Meenakshi, and Shyam, 3 college kids who thought they could outsmart the rules, only to discover the truly terrifying cost of deception. So buckle up, because this is going to be one incredibly suspenseful ride.
So what actually happens when a tiny white lie to your parents leads you straight off the map? Well, it all started with a classic act of rebellion. You know the drill. The trio officially told their families they were heading out on a boring, supervised college trip. But in reality, they decided to ditch the professors, scrap the curfews, and go completely rogue. Their real destination was Kandoli, a remote, stunning village way up in the mountains of Uttarakhand. They just wanted to live by their own rules. But what happens when that independent streak leads you right into a trap?
Okay, let's get right into part 1, a fake journey. It's early morning, right? Ravi is frantically packing his bags, totally buzzing with the thrill of pulling off this secret trip. But his mom, seeing him up so unusually early, immediately gets suspicious. She just knows something is off with this so-called college trip. But Ravi, fueled by that classic youthful invincibility, he just completely brushes her off. He laughs, basically telling her she worries too much, because he always does things backwards anyway. That's when she drops this chilling, primal warning. Going to the mountains is no game. She explicitly tells him to go carefully and come back carefully. But of course, Ravi totally dismisses it. He and his friends felt like real adults. They were way too old to be babysat by professors or tucked in at 8 p.m. They were going to write their own story. But as we're about to see, ignoring this incredibly basic, instinctual warning was their very first fatal mistake.
Which brings us to part 2, the unknown path and Maya Cottage. The journey itself is this grueling 6-hour bus ride. By the time they finally reach their stop, the evening darkness is already creeping in. But there's a huge, glaring problem. The bus drops them off way too early. They step out into the freezing air and nothing. No houses, no village, literally just the desolate, empty mountain peaks and the dark forest closing in fast around them.
Let's walk through the timeline of how fast this deteriorated. They're dropped off early. To get to the village and the cottage Ravi booked online, they literally have to take this narrow, terrifying dirt path straight into the pitch-black woods. They hike for a solid hour. Still no sign of civilization. Panic is definitely setting in now. Ravi checks his phone. Boom, 0 bars. The network has completely vanished. The isolation is total. And just as thunder starts violently rolling overhead, they finally stumble onto this solitary wooden board planted in the woods. It just reads, Maya Cottage.
But any relief they felt instantly evaporates the second they actually look at the building. I mean, talk about a reality check. The expectation, Ravi had seen these pristine, beautiful photos of a modern cottage online. The reality looming right in front of them in the dark, a dilapidated, eerie, rotting structure that looks straight up haunted. It didn't scream vacation retreat. It screamed horror movie trap. But, with a storm brewing and 0 cell service, what else could they do? They felt they had absolutely no choice but to go inside and seek shelter.
Moving into part 3, a strange old woman and a scary night. As they're standing there, shivering and debating their terrible options, the heavy front door slowly creaks open, and out steps this old woman. The students just instantly fall dead silent. In this hushed, super unnatural voice, she tells them their rooms are ready and they need to get inside before the rain hits. But guys, the vibe inside is just as terrifying. It feels like an ancient, decaying tomb. When she hands them the keys on a little tray, she lifts her veil slightly and gives them this smile. It was a smile so deeply unsettling, so fundamentally wrong, that it physically made Ravi sick with anxiety. Desperate for just any sense of normalcy, Ravi asks her if anyone else is staying in the cottage. The old woman doesn't even bother to turn around. She just mutters this absolute nightmare of a response. They stayed, they left, now you go. And without another word, she literally just vanishes behind a tiny door back behind the reception desk, leaving the 3 of them standing there, completely alone in the suffocating, dead silent hallway. This leads us straight into part 4, darkness, anklets, and the unseen shadow. Now, the true terror really kicks into high gear when they retreat to their quarters. The old woman had placed them at the very end of the hall, 3 separate but interconnected rooms. Trying to shake off the dread, they lock their doors, hoping to just sleep it off. But the supernatural escalation starts almost instantly, zeroing in on their isolated, vulnerable minds.
What happens next is basically a rapid psychological breakdown. First, Meenakshi passes out, only to be jolted awake by this gruesome, ultra-realistic nightmare where all three of them are hanging lifeless in their exact rooms. She runs into Ravi's room in an absolute panic. Seconds later, Shyam bursts in. He's terrified. He says he was just sitting in his room when he felt a massive, heavy presence and heard this phantom humming coming from inside his empty bathroom. Ravi desperately tries to play it off as their minds playing tricks on them, but then the cottage itself chimes in. The lights violently flicker, buzz, and just die completely, plunging them into absolute pitch-black darkness.
So what happens in the dark? Complete and total chaos. Shyam, trying to step up and be brave, reaches blindly for the light switch. But out of nowhere, an unseen, massive force violently shoves him, like he is literally sent flying across the room. The absolute silence is shattered by the sickening sound of breaking glass as his head smashes right through a glass cabinet. Ravi frantically gets his phone flashlight on, revealing Shyam bleeding on the floor, gasping out that someone or something just physically threw him. As Ravi and Meenakshi scramble to help a bleeding Shyam back to his feet, a new, absolutely paralyzing sound cuts right through the dark. The loud, heavy, metallic clinking of anklets, a pile, and it's echoing from the hallway, right outside their door. It is so loud, it's bouncing violently off the walls of the entire cottage. Whatever just attacked Shyam is now pacing right outside their room.
Part 5, The Room of Black Magic. At this point, Ravi makes the only choice left. They have to run. Supporting Shyam, they stumble out of their room, making a desperate, blind dash down that pitch-black hallway toward the main entrance. But as they get close to the reception area, Ravi just freezes in his tracks. That small door behind the reception desk, the one that creepy old woman disappeared into, it is now wide open, and there is a bizarre, flickering light glowing from inside it.
Now, against literally every human survival instinct screaming at him to just get out of there, Ravi takes a slow step toward that glowing doorway. The tension here is just immense. Those heavy anklets are still loudly echoing somewhere in the dark behind them. He slowly peers through the doorframe, and what he sees in there, it completely shatters any tiny shred of logic or hope that this was just some run-down hotel.
So the crucial point here is what he actually found in that room. It completely defied reality. The space was entirely empty of furniture, but on the bare floor, there were lit candles casting these long, jumping shadows and perfectly drawn, strange circular marks everywhere. Guys, it was a ritual space. These were the undeniable, crystal-clear signs of black magic and dark occult practices. This was never a guest cottage. They had basically walked right into an active site for dark rituals. Sheer panic completely overtakes him. Ravi slowly backs away from the occult circles, his heart absolutely hammering against his ribs. He turns back to his terrified friends, looks them in the eye, and just screams one word at the very top of his lungs. Run! He yells that they are leaving right now. They are never, ever coming back to this place, and they are never returning to this mountain.
They bust through the front entrance of the cottage and just launch themselves into a blind sprint into the night. They do not look back, not once. They just keep running through the dark forest, pure adrenaline pushing them way past exhaustion, until finally the silhouettes of the actual, real village of Kandoli appear in the distance. They literally collapse near the very first houses they find. The actual living villagers hear them and immediately rush out to help the bleeding, totally traumatized students.
Which brings us to our final act. Part 6, The Most Terrifying Truth. Because as the morning light finally breaks, the villagers reveal something to them that turns this horrifying physical ordeal into an absolute mind-bending psychological twist. You see, when Ravi tries to explain how they just barely escaped from Maya Cottage in the woods, the villagers just stare at them in utter confusion. And then, horror.
Here is the twist that is gonna stick with you. The villagers calmly explain that there is absolutely no structure out in those woods. Zero. Maya Cottage simply does not exist. It was a complete and total illusion. The actual booking Ravi made online, it was for a place called Maya Cottage, which was safely located right there, smack dab in the middle of the populated village. The haunted ruins, the old woman, the occult room, they had literally spent the night trapped inside some kind of supernatural manifestation that lured them straight into the dark.
This entire explainer leaves us with some absolutely non-negotiable rules for survival. The student's terrifying ordeal is the ultimate cautionary tale. Number 1, never, ever lie to your family about where you're going.
I mean, if the village hadn't saved them, literally no one would have ever known where to even start looking. Number 2, rigorously verify your online bookings. Make sure they actually match reality. And finally, the biggest rule of all, never ignore your primal instincts. When Robbie's mom said the mountains were no game, when the cottage looked like a horror set, when the old woman's smile felt fundamentally wrong, their guts were screaming at them to turn back.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We go about our modern lives feeling so confident, right? We're so sure that our smartphones and our independence are going to protect us. But out there, in the dark, the rules change completely. So I have to ask you, the next time you find yourself far from home and your gut is quietly whispering that something is terribly, horribly wrong, will you actually listen? Or will you walk straight through the front door of your own Maya Cottage? Think about that.